There's a moment, somewhere between sleep and waking, where a small number of people do something that sounds almost impossible. Their own brain quietly catches itself lying to them mid-dream, and instead of waking up, they take over. No alarm goes off. Nobody shakes them awake. Some part of their mind just quietly raises its hand and says, "This isn't real." And then, instead of the dream collapsing the way it's supposed to, they keep going, except now they're the one driving. They can fly. They can walk through a wall. They can turn around and face the thing that was chasing them and watch it disappear because they know with total certainty that none of it can actually hurt them. This isn't a story or a superstition. It's a real documented state called lucid dreaming, and it forces a genuinely strange question. How exactly can you be asleep and awake at the same time? To answer that, you first have to understand what a normal dream actually is, because most dreams don't work anything like this. Every night, your brain cycles through different sleep stages, and the deepest, most vivid dreaming happens during REM sleep. Rapid eye movement. During REM, your brain is almost as electrically active as it is while you're fully conscious. Your eyes dart back and forth behind closed lids. Entire worlds get built out of nothing, characters, locations, storylines, and normally you accept every bit of it without a shred of suspicion. A talking dog. A childhood home that doesn't exist anymore. A test you forgot to study for. None of it raises a red flag. Your brain's ability to judge what's real basically shuts off for the night completely. That shutdown isn't a flaw. It happens in a specific region called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-awareness, logic, and critical thinking. During ordinary dreaming, this region goes almost silent. That's exactly why dream logic falls apart the second you wake up and try to explain it out loud. In the dream, walking through a door and ending up on a different continent felt completely normal because the one part of your brain built to catch that impossibility was offline. Lucid dreaming is what happens when that region refuses to fully power down. Somehow, in the middle of REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex flickers back on just enough for a person to realize in real time that they're inside a dream. And the moment that switch flips, something remarkable happens. The dreamer doesn't wake up. They stay exactly where they are, except now with a working sense of self-awareness sitting on top of the dream like a second layer. Researchers have actually caught this transition happening live, using EEG scans strapped to sleeping volunteers. Brain activity during a lucid dream looks like a genuine hybrid state, ordinary REM patterns mixed with short bursts of activity that normally only show up while someone is fully awake. It's not quite asleep. It's not quite awake. It's a third thing, and scientists are still mapping exactly what it is. This isn't a theory built on secondhand dream journals, either. In a series of now famous experiments, researchers worked with trained lucid dreamers and had them signal from inside the dream itself, using a pre-agreed pattern of eye movements since the eyes are one of the only body parts that stay unlocked during REM sleep. The dreamers would become lucid, then move their eyes left, right in that exact sequence the instant they realized they were dreaming. Outside the dream, hooked up to eye-tracking equipment, researchers watched those precise signals appear in real time on the monitor. It was, essentially, the first confirmed two-way message sent from a sleeping brain to the waking world. So this isn't a vague, unfalsifiable claim. It's measurable. It's repeatable. It's been captured on lab equipment more than once. Which raises the obvious next question. Why would a brain ever evolve the ability to do this in the first place? Nobody has a fully settled answer, but there are a few strong leads. One points back to something called metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. Humans are unusually good at this compared to almost every other species. We don't just have thoughts. We can step outside them, examine them, question whether they actually make sense. Some researchers believe lucid dreaming might simply be metacognition leaking into a place it normally has no access to. Your internal fact-checker briefly catching a glitch in the dream world the same way it might catch a flawed argument while you're wide awake. Interestingly, people who lucid dream more often tend to score higher on tests measuring self-reflection and self-awareness during ordinary waking life. That doesn't prove one causes the other, but it's a pattern researchers keep running into, study after study, In group after group, there's a developmental angle too. Lucid dreaming tends to peak during adolescence and then gradually fade for a lot of people as they get older. That timing lines up almost exactly with the period when the prefrontal cortex itself is still under heavy construction, which suggests the two might be tangled together in ways researchers haven't fully untangled yet. Whatever the root cause turns out to be, once someone becomes lucid, the dream doesn't just get clearer. It becomes strangely controllable. Skilled lucid dreamers report flying on command, conjuring objects out of thin air, or walking straight up to a recurring nightmare instead of running from it. Some describe using the dream to rehearse real-world skills, a musician working through a difficult piece, an athlete running a routine, and then waking up genuinely feeling more prepared, even though their body never actually moved an inch. That last claim has actually been tested in labs. And the results are strange enough to make researchers sit up straighter. In small studies, people who mentally rehearsed physical tasks during lucid dreams showed measurable improvement afterward, sometimes performing close to people who practiced the same movements while fully awake. It turns out your brain doesn't always draw a hard line between a vividly imagined action and one you physically performed, whether that imagining happens through meditation, visualization, or, apparently, a fully lucid dream. That finding has opened the door to some genuinely practical uses. Athletes have used lucid dream rehearsal to mentally run through competition scenarios before the real thing. People recovering from certain injuries have used it to practice movement patterns. Their body isn't cleared to attempt yet. And clinically, lucid dreaming has become a real therapeutic tool for people suffering from chronic nightmares. Instead of jolting awake in a panic, a lucid dreamer can recognize their dreaming and consciously rewrite the ending, turn and face whatever was chasing them, or simply decide the scene isn't real and let it dissolve on the spot. Not everyone lucid dreams naturally, and how often it happens varies enormously from person to person. Surveys suggest roughly half of all people report having at least one lucid dream at some point in their life, but only a small slice experience them regularly, once a week or more. That gap has spawned an entire field of research, and a small industry built around teaching people how to trigger lucid dreams on purpose. One of the most well-studied techniques is called reality testing. Throughout the day, a person repeatedly asks themselves, "Am I dreaming right now?" and actually checks for small inconsistencies, glancing at a clock twice to see if the numbers shift, or trying to push a finger straight through the palm of the other hand. The logic is that if you drill this questioning habit hard enough while awake, it eventually shows up uninvited inside a dream too, and that one flicker of genuine doubt is often all it takes to trigger lucidity. Another method, called wake back to bed, involves waking up roughly 5 to 6 hours into a night's sleep, staying awake for a short stretch, then going back to bed. The timing is deliberate, aimed squarely at REM sleep, since REM periods stretch longer and hit more frequently later in the night. That means the brain re-entering sleep during this specific window has a noticeably higher shot at slipping straight into a lucid state. There's also a technique called MemLD, mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, where a person repeats a specific intention to themselves right before falling asleep. Something like, "Next time I'm dreaming, I will remember I'm dreaming." It sounds almost too simple to actually work, but in controlled studies, it's one of the more consistently effective methods researchers have tested, especially when paired with daytime reality testing. None of these techniques guarantee success on demand, and lucid dreaming remains something of a skill, one some people pick up in days, and others chase for months without much luck. But the fact that it can be trained at all says something important. This isn't a rare genetic gift handed to a lucky handful of people. It's a latent capability already sitting inside an ordinary human brain, just waiting for the right conditions to flip the switch. There's a stranger cousin of lucid dreaming worth mentioning too, something called a false awakening. This is when you dream that you've woken up, gotten out of bed, maybe even started your morning routine, only to actually wake up later and realize none of that happened. Sometimes these false awakenings stack, one nested inside another, where a person dreams they woke up from a false awakening, only to still be dreaming the whole time. It's genuinely disorienting even to describe, and it shows exactly how convincingly the sleeping brain can simulate the specific experience of being conscious and alert, right down to the mundane details of getting dressed or checking a phone. Modern lucid dreaming research really took off in the late 1970s and early 1980s, once scientists finally developed reliable ways to verify the phenomenon instead of relying purely on personal accounts. Before that, plenty of researchers stayed openly skeptical that lucid dreaming was even real in any measurable sense, since dream reports are inherently subjective and easy to write off as exaggeration after the fact. The eye signal experiments changed that almost overnight because for the first time, a sleeping brain was sending real information out into the waking world that could be checked against a clock by someone standing in the room. That shift from anecdote to verified data is a big part of why lucid dreaming eventually became a legitimate, funded corner of neuroscience instead of something confined to spiritual practice and personal dream journals. Culturally, lucid dreaming isn't even a modern discovery, even though the scientific label is fairly recent. Tibetan Buddhist practitioners described techniques resembling lucid dreaming over 1,000 years ago as part of a practice sometimes called dream yoga, aimed at recognizing the illusory nature of experience, whether you're awake or asleep. Ancient Greek philosophers wrote about becoming aware of dreaming while still fully inside the dream itself. The experience has clearly existed for as long as humans have slept and quietly reflected on their own minds. What's changed is our ability to actually study it under controlled lab conditions instead of relying entirely on someone's word for it. There's something almost unsettling about all of this once you actually sit with it. Every single night, your brain builds an entire convincing world out of nothing, complete with physics, memory, emotion, and consequence, and it does this so effectively that you rarely question a single detail while it's happening. Lucid dreaming is essentially a brief crack in that illusion, a moment where the part of you responsible for questioning reality wakes up just enough to spot the seams without fully shutting the whole experience down. Some researchers now treat lucid dreaming as a genuine window into consciousness itself, a rare state where the line between subjective inner experience and objective, measurable brain activity gets thinner than almost anywhere else in neuroscience. If you can consciously signal from inside a dream and someone outside can confirm that signal on a machine, that's a real physical bridge between two states of mind that were assumed, for most of human history, to be completely sealed off from each other. So the next time you're falling asleep, know this. Somewhere inside your own skull, there's a switch that occasionally flips, one that lets a small, fully aware version of you step directly into the world your brain built overnight and actually look around. Most nights, that switch stays off, and you wake up with nothing but fragments half-remembered and fading fast. But every so often, for reasons researchers are still working to fully explain, it flips on. And for a few strange, vivid minutes, you get to be both the dreamer and the one watching the dream, fully aware, fully in control, standing inside a world that exists nowhere except behind your own closed eyes.